build a high-performing culture? This is Culture Architects. Candid conversations with extraordinary leaders sharing their biggest successes, failures, and lessons learned on their culture journeys. Here's David J. Friedman.
My guest today is Zach McLeroy, the co-founder and the chairman of Zaxby's. Since opening his first location in 1990, Zach's leadership has led the way to Zaxby's becoming the 30th largest restaurant chain in the United States. From that very beginning to a billion-dollar franchise, Zach attributes Zaxby's growth to the intentional relationships he made within the company. Zaxby's culture is at the core of their success, making Zach a fantastic culture architect. Zach, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Excited to have our conversation. So, Zach, you have such a fascinating story. So, for our audience's sake, take us back to the very beginning when you had this vision of opening a chicken restaurant. Like, who thinks, you know what, I'm going to have a chicken restaurant? That's kind of a strange start. What inspired you to start the company?
Well, it was actually kind of accidental because I have to go back a little bit further than the beginning of Zaxby's.
Okay.
This predates Zaxby's a little bit. So all through college, I put myself through college, and I did that by working in restaurants. Mm-hmm. And so all that time, anything from a cook to cashiering to being a bartender to being a waiter. So I got a lot of experience in hospitality the latter years of high school and all the way through my long college career because I was putting myself through. So it took more than the standard 4 years. So when I actually graduated and got my degree and got out, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And my best friend from high school, Tony, and I, he was in the mortgage business. He said, "Hey, until you decide what you want to do, just come here and work for me for a while." And it was a pure commission job. Mm-hmm. And it was a sales job, and I had to go out and introduce myself to realtors and try to get them to originate mortgages through me. So it was a feast or famine kind of job. Some weeks there was no paychecks, then some weeks we had a closing, I got a paycheck. Mm-hmm. So I just found that wasn't my cup of tea, and I started reflecting on what I really enjoyed. And I looked back on the time during college. I really enjoyed working in restaurants. I found a love for hospitality. And so I thought this was an opportunity for me. And at the time in 1990, there was no one really focusing on chicken fingers as an entree item or a main center of plate item. It was really appetizers on most menus in all the casual dining restaurants. So I looked at this as an opportunity to possibly do something that hadn't been done yet. And so I took my experience of 5 or 6 years in restaurants. And I told my partner, I said, "Look, I'm going to leave the mortgage business and I'm going to start a restaurant." And he said, "You're going to need some help with that. You're going to need somebody who can do payroll and balance sheets and sales tax reports," and because he had a banking background. And I said, "You know what? You're right. I'm going to need that." So we decided to partner together. I was sort of the nomad that moved away from Athens and opened our first store. And I guess you could say we were in the right place at the right time with the right investment. And God certainly had his hand in it. So we found a location in Statesboro, Georgia, which is Georgia Southern College at the time, and the land lease was $400 a month, and our operating capital to get started was only $16,000. Wow! So that's when I sold my drum set. I raised $8,000. He matched it with $8,000, and we found ourselves in business. Wow! And we did every job in the beginning. I was everything from HR to marketing to cook, cashier. Did it all. But that's the way it is when you start a new business. You wear every single hat until you actually have an opportunity or have enough scale to hire for this position.
Yes. So I'm still curious. Not many people in their 20s would think I can start a restaurant. So did you always have an entrepreneurial bent to you, or like what caused you to think, that's a pretty gutsy thing to do in this way. Even, the idea, as you mentioned, of chicken was new as a main item then, but even the basic idea that here I am in my 20s, I think I'll start a restaurant. That's a pretty gutsy thing to do.
Well, I guess you could say I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. Okay. As a kid, I had my own grass cutting company when I was 13. I'd cut all the neighbors' yards, and that led to doing other things. I would every Christmas, I would go to North Carolina and I would buy a truckload of Christmas trees, bring them down here and sell in the Athens area.
Okay.
And that was actually the money I used to help get through college. That paid for my tuition and my books.
Okay.
I was always looking for opportunities where I kind of worked for myself. And I learned a lot working from others that helped me to learn how to work for myself or manage myself.
Okay.
But restaurants were, it's not something that I intended to go into. It's something I found a passion for while working in the restaurant industry.
Got it.
And that's what led me to starting it. And at the time also, I thought, I have everything, I have really nothing to lose. I looked at the downside. So if I try this and I lose my $8,000, can I recover from it?
Mm-hmm.
And my answer to myself was yes. This is a small risk. It's more of a risk of time and a risk of a career than it is a risk of money.
Right.
And that's when I decided to make the investment and pursue it. But, I went into it with the attitude that I was going to make this successful no matter what, because everyone else got paid before I did. I was the last person to get a paycheck. And I think one of the critical things that really helped us for the first 10 years especially, we agreed that all we would pay each other is $10 an hour.
Wow.
So I was working 80-hour weeks, getting $800 checks. He was working 3-hour weeks, getting a $30 check, but he also had another business.
Wow.
So Tony could sustain his family and his lifestyle through his mortgage business. And I was working so much, I never spent any money. And we decided we would take every dollar that we had and reinvest because we looked at the power of multiplication of this business. And I learned a great term in the early years. It's called phantom income. And before I started Zaxby's, I wasn't aware of phantom income. But that's income you make and you have nothing to show for it because we were reinvesting every single dollar.
Uh-huh.
So we had a small problem. We didn't have any money to pay our taxes at the end of the year, so we would go to our local community bank, borrow the money to pay our taxes, spend a year paying them back as we continued to reinvest in the business.
Wow. So when you opened the first store, did you have a vision at the time that a goal or a vision that this would be many, many stores? Or were you initially just saying, hey, let's just do this one and let's see if we can make it work?
The vision was to do one and possibly get it to as large as 8 or 10 locations, just owned by us. Never considered franchising. I would say a year into the business, our guests were starting to tell us, hey, this is a great concept. Y'all should think about franchising. And never had to really considered it. And so we met with a franchise attorney in Atlanta and started putting together our franchising offering circular. And basically, we took a year to take everything in our heads and put on paper so we could franchise our business. And that's kind of what led to franchising. But franchising was also done pretty uniquely. We never advertised. It was all word of mouth. It was friends. It was family. And in the early days, when someone wanted to come into the business, we offered, sometimes there's a little bit of anxiety about coming into a new emerging business or new emerging brand. And so we offered them the opportunity that we would be their partner at any level they wanted. We could be a minority partner or majority partner. And we think that's really what helped, I guess you could say, motivate our growth with friends and family. That we became partners in their businesses.
Wow. And did that continue forever, or did that change later?
That continued during the first decade of the business. At the end of 10 years, we were probably partners with about 30 different locations with about 10 or about 15 different licensees.
Okay. So let's go back to that beginning again. You start this chicken restaurant. As you mentioned, that was kind of a new concept at the time. There must have been people telling you, come on, Zach, you can't have chicken be the main meal here. There must got to be something else. What was your response to that?
I heard that every time we opened. Especially, I remember the very first location, and I was having various subcontractors coming to do work. And I remember this one gentleman was a plumber, and he was asking about the menu. And I said, it's going to be chicken. He said, no burgers? I said, no burgers. Hot dogs? No hot dogs, just chicken. And I remember him saying, that's quite risky. Good luck to you. and I think him saying that gave me more ambition. Just to prove to myself and to prove to others we could make this work. And that's why I was so bent on making sure that our team members get taken care of first, our vendors, and me and my partner last.
Wow.
And you got to take care of people, so they'll take care of you. And that's kind of, I think, when I sort of adopted the philosophy around people and around culture. It was also about how I was raised by my father and my mother. But I realized just how important people are. And with the right people, anything is possible.
Yeah. So it was pretty early then in your career that you began to think about culture as a differentiator.
Absolutely.
And that was driven, it sounds like, mostly just from a general appreciation about people and the value of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so what did you do in the early days to establish that culture? I mean, was there something systematic beyond, hey, my partner and I are good people and we care about people and we try to treat them well? Was there anything more structured or systematic you did in the early days to build and ensure that culture?
Early on, I would say it was more organic and less systematic.
Mm-hmm.
It was just about doing the right thing, being treated the way you want to be treated, the things you learn growing up, and just surround yourself with people that are like you, and which we always try to do that with our team members as well as our franchisees. And I would think for me it was about building relationships. These weren't employees. I looked at this more like these are friends. I got to know these people, and I spent time with them outside of work, and especially early on when I had more time to do that. And I found that was really enriching to me and to them to build the relationship on a personal level, not just on a work level.
Right. And so when you started to franchise, so how many years into the business did you start to franchise?
In 93.
Okay.
Early 93.
So pretty early. So pretty early. Right. And how many stores did you have before you franchised?
We had 6 stores before we franchised.
Okay. So
6 company stores.
Given your passion for people and the way you did business, I'm guessing that when you decided to franchise, there was at least some reticence or fear of, all right, how do we ensure that this thing that has made us special through 6 stores doesn't get diluted or lost as we start to franchise? So
right.
How did you manage through that?
Well, we always talk about what keeps you awake at night, and that certainly kept me awake. I wanted to make sure that they adopted the same philosophies of business and had the same passion for people as we did. So like I said, we tried to surround ourselves with people that are much like us. Think about it in terms of they've worked before, they've worked for themselves, they are sort of self-starters, they have an entrepreneurial spirit, they care about people. And we'd make sure in the early days as well that there was an intense amount of training. Those early franchisees would come work with me in a store. And they would work in every position, really learn the business quite well. And this would be for months. This may be even 6 months or 8 months. So by the time they opened their own restaurant, they really knew what to do. And that's the way I kind of managed the replication process of being like me and like Tony, and to grow this business and to care about the right things.
Right.
The bottom line is important, but you don't have a bottom line unless you have people.
Yes.
And so if we focus on those people, the bottom line is going to take care of itself. And I always try to instill that and convey that. And I was very direct about it. I said that the people are the most important thing in the business. We can teach anybody to serve, anybody to manage, anybody to cook. But what's really got to focus on is your people skills and making sure you surround yourself with great people and make sure you're encouraging and motivating and supporting and caring. You have to know that you care about them.
Right.
And they can't care about you or your business until they know you care about them.
Yeah. So you mentioned it a moment ago before, Zach, that you absorbed some of this from your father, or your parents and or your father. So tell me a little bit about what did your father do?
Well, he was entrepreneurial as well.
Okay.
And I remember working with him as early as 7 years old. He would work at the theater during the day, and at night he had a paper route, and I would help him with his paper route. I would sit in the back of his car and roll the papers and throw them in the front seat, and he would pitch them.
Wow.
So I learned at a young age about hard work, and about doing more, going above and beyond when it comes to work. And through the years, I watched him open several businesses. He had his own flooring business. I watched him move up to management for Sherwin-Williams Paint Company, and I often helped there in the stock room, putting paint cans away. And he became a contractor at one time and built homes.
Wow.
So just over the years, watching my dad take risk and start new ventures. And he would do that with good partners, people who had experience in those areas. But I think just observing that and being part of it kind of rubbed off on me and made me be more entrepreneurial.
Got it. And so was he somebody, I'm assuming, who had a deep caring for people as well?
Absolutely. He's always had a deep caring for people. I have great parents. I'm fortunate. I'm really close to them, and learned a lot about my values through my parents. And sometimes it's not what you're taught; it's what you observe. And I've had a great role model from both of my parents because of that.
And they're both still with us?
Both still with us. Yep.
That's great. That's great. And so let's go back to these early days. You've got 5-6 stores. You start franchising. This thing's starting to really take off. Were there any spots in there that you had significant setbacks and wondered if this is going to work or we got to change course? What happened that didn't work so well in those early days?
We certainly had our setbacks. I would say in restaurant number 3, we thought we wanted to be in the bar business. And we actually acquired a location that had an existing bar. And all we had to do is have the liquor license transferred to our name. So we thought, hey, it's going to be great. We're going to serve our menu and we're going to have a full bar. And we did that for about 2 years with the bar. And what we realized is, first of all, we were losing our shirt. These bartenders they were always friends with the people who came in, and so we would have these $10 bar tabs and $50 tips. So that told us that people felt guilty because of getting too many free drinks. So one is we learned that we need to get out of the bar business, and secondly we realized having a kind of a bar business atmosphere was really running off our families and people who could really be the mainstay of our business. And we wanted to build a family culture. So we decided at that time to get out of the bar business and never went back in the bar business. So I'm glad we experienced that really early on because that kind of helped, I guess, focus more on our trajectory on who we wanted to be. Right. And it really helped our restaurant propel into a new type of brand, attracting a new type of guest.
And so it's interesting that obviously there's a logical comparison between you and Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A yes. being a Southern brand and chicken only, and somewhere in that same time period growing. Tell me about your relationship, if any, with Chick-fil-A. Are they a competitor? Are they a role model? How are you different from Chick-fil-A, and what role has Chick-fil-A, if any, played in your growth?
I would say they are actually both. They are certainly a competitor. Everyone out there that serves food is a competitor for us. But as far as Chick-fil-A is concerned, there's absolutely a role model. I think everyone in the food industry, especially quick casual and fast food, aspires to be like Chick-fil-A in terms of service, in terms of speed, in terms of quality, and what the brand stands for. And we were the same. I really admire the family. I was privileged to meet Dan Cathy one time. Extremely humble man, a great man, and they run a tremendous business. And we've tried to emulate that. And I think most people would want to do that. They're extremely successful family and brand. And it's great to be in the same sentence with Chick-fil-A because they are such a great company.
I imagine to some extent the fact that they helped popularize chicken as a meal was probably helpful in the industry for you.
Very much so. they were sort of the pioneers. And wherever a Chick-fil-A is, we like to be as well, because we really share the same guests. They go back and forth between the two brands because it's two different experiences. And what they do real well, and what we do well. And of course, there's plenty out there for everyone. So I've looked at them as a healthy competitor in terms of being pioneering and making chicken acceptable in places, and being first to market, which they always are, is really helped us chart a path over the years. And as we kind of pioneered in new markets, because Chick-fil-A was already there.
So as you start franchising, when did you more formalize your focus on culture? So as you were describing, culture's always been really important to you. Taking care of your people's always been critical for you. And it was organic in the early days. It was just who you and your partner were, more so than, we got this plan about our culture. It was just being you. Right. Somewhere along the path, you must have said to yourself, you know what, we're growing at a rate that we're growing. You and your partner can't be seen by everybody. Your example, you can't teach every one of these franchises. And so somewhere we've got to put some structure behind this to more formalize our approach to culture. What precipitated that? When did that happen, and what precipitated that?
I think what precipitated is exactly what you said. When we started growing and realizing this is growing beyond our ability to touch every single person, like we had in the early days. And that's when we really got formalized, strategic around the culture, and started writing. We would have certain components of the manual about culture. We would have as part of the training when you came to Zaxby's to learn about how to operate a store. A big component of that was about the culture, about the hiring processes, about the onboarding process, about how you conduct yourself with your people. And another thing I think was a big contributor to that was we have 2 events a year. We would have a business conference, and we would have a convention. And the business conference was really to talk about the business, the new initiatives, and things that we need to do or change about the business or to evolve the business. And the convention was more about celebrating the success. That's of new stores. That's of reaching new milestones. And we spent a lot of time there talking about our culture and talking about what really drives the business is the culture of the business. Because your food can be great and your food can bring you in, but your culture is what keeps people. And we've always looked at our team members as our guest. That's the first guest we have to serve. And if we serve them right, they're going to take the discretionary effort to serve our paying customers. And so we always talked about that. It was always a paramount part of everything that we did. So it started to be more strategic and more and planned around manuals, but it continued to be talked about. We never stopped talking about it. And it became a part of everything we did. We host events on our campus, probably once a month. We'll have a Valentine's, something around Valentine's, something around Father's Day, Mother's Day. We're always giving out baskets, and we're having raffles, and we're having meets and greets in the parking lot, and we have a tailgate during football season. So we're always getting together and being social. And and most of the time, 99% of the time, we got together without any business objective. We get together to be together. And that's when you build relationships. And I think that's one of the sad things about this remote work today and this Zoom environment. You can't maintain and build the relationships like you can being together. Right. There's nothing like being together.
Yeah. So I had interviewed on my podcast Horst Schulze from Ritz-Carlton, who of course is legendary from a service perspective. And I had learned a lot from Ritz-Carlton originally about the structure they put in place with their 20 basics and a daily lineup where they focus on one basic each day and go through them every 20 days and back to the beginning. So when Horst was trying to build what he called the finest hotel company in the world, he had outlined a very specific set of behaviors, their basics, that these are the specific things we're going to do to create a different guest experience. And we're going to put some structure behind that by taking one every single day and in a daily lineup focusing on it. I'm curious, from your perspective, is there some structure like that you created where there's a certain set of values, behaviors, whatever you want to call them, that you focused on and in some structured, consistent manner? Like, how did you put structure behind that?
Well, we structured that by creating our core values and by developing our mission statement.
Okay.
And those are the things that we focused on, talked about at every meeting, and conveyed as often as we could. We didn't go to the extent that certainly Ritz-Carlton has. I guess our approach was a little softer, maybe, and but we didn't really focus on one at a time all the time. It was kind of, we focused on all of it together.
Got it.
And we thought one thing didn't stand alone. It takes all of it to work and to be what we call our culture. But the thing I've noticed over the years, growing from 1 to 900 plus locations, it's become increasingly more difficult to maintain the culture.
Right.
The more people you get involved, that's just the way it works. And especially when you have what we call owner operators. They're their own boss, and they can run their business the way they want to. Unlike, that's one of the pluses to Chick-fil-A. They own everything. They control everything. We only control our company stores. We cannot control our franchisees. So that's made it more challenging for us.
Yeah. And so have you ever had, let's say, franchisees where you saw they weren't operating consistently with the way you want Zaxby to be run? And have you ever gotten rid of a franchise? Can you get rid of them, and have you?
We have. We have. It's unfortunate. It does happen. And, one thing this business has really taught me, I've always thought I was a good judge of character. And I've learned over the years, you can be the best judge of character, but you're going to miss one or two.
Yes.
Or a dozen or so.
Yep.
And it has certainly happened to us at the corporate level as well as the franchisee level. And, but I think as long as you can minimize that, that's the best you can expect, because you can't completely control it or eliminate it.
Yeah.
And that's what we've tried to do, and try to recognize it early on and deal with it. Because it's naive to think that you can not have that kind of disparity in your business, whether through a franchisee or a team member.
And that concludes part 1 of my conversation with Zach McLeroy, the co-founder and chairman of Zaxby's. I'm really looking forward to part 2, where Zach's going to discuss the growth of Zaxby's and specifically how he selected the right people to maintain that company culture that he had worked so hard to develop. You're not going to want to miss that. See you next time on Culture Architects.
This has been Culture Architects with David J. Friedman. Join us next time for more insights and wisdom from great leaders in all walks of life. To book David for your next event, or to learn more about his writing, speaking, or consulting, go to davidjfriedman.com. Culture Architects with David J. Friedman is a production of CultureWise.